There we are. So we are now live and recording on our monthly broadcast. So we'll kick off officially just in a few moments. But you were showing us, Suzy, where you currently are in the hotel. Show us the view there, please. Excellent.
How's that?
Yep, we're getting an idea. And where is that?
The newly finished Mercure Hotel. It opens at the end of the month. So my job is done. And now all the furniture and everything else is going in. And I go to the hotel next door to finish that one.
Excellent, excellent. No problem at all. Well, good to have everyone here. And John's made it in from the US of A. Your time zone, John's a bit different now, isn't it, than it was?
I get to sleep in. We've already switched to daylight savings time, so we're an hour closer to each other.
Well, excellent, excellent. And how you enjoying the fact that the broadcast time has moved from 10 a.m. UK time to 12 a.m. UK time?
Well, that certainly has a 2-hour benefit, clearly. And if that was an algebra test, I want full points.
Yeah. Question is your performance even better than you've had good sleep overnight rather than red eyes and behind the computer screen?
I trained as a software engineer. Lack of sleep is just standard.
Again, another good answer. Okay, listen, on that note, let's get started officially. So welcome everyone to our monthly broadcast. For those of you who are new, let me start off initially by explaining that this is a joint broadcast held by Leo Crowdfunding and Property Fortress. So my name is David Johnson. I'm the CEO of Leo Crowdfunding. We're an equity property crowdfunding platform. And my co-host is Mr. John Corey. I'll let him introduce himself and give a bit about his background.
John Corey, long-term property investor. It'll be, by the way, ladies, 40 years this year since my first deal. November of 83. Shocking.
Wow.
I know. I look like I'm 10. So long-term US UK property education, property risk management, buy-to-let landlord. I sort of do the boring stuff. I like the sort of vanilla single let that's sort of market focused. And at the same time, I like the financial engineering. So.
Right. Thanks very much, John, for that. So this is recorded and we host it on our YouTube channel. So you can re-listen to today's special topic, or you can go back to the back catalogue, and there's a whole host, about 140 recordings of these broadcasts covering a whole range of property-related topics, as well as a fantastic array of guests. So there's a wealth of educational and informational knowledge on our YouTube channel. Just go to YouTube/Leo Crowdfunding, and you'll be able to find us there. So today we're covering our special topic, which of course you're well aware of, and then we're going to do John's Corey's Corner, quick platform news, and that will be the broadcast today. So we normally do our market update and our platform news at the start, but with so many special guests on today, we're diving straight in to our special topic. It was, of course, last week International Women's Day, and as sort of to celebrate that, we have brought on some fantastic guests. So I suppose in the order of the screen is probably the best way of doing it. Would you like to introduce yourselves, please? And then we'll get into our discussion.
I'll let you do it.
David, when you say order the screen, what I see and what you see don't match. So why don't you name the first person and then they'll name the next one.
Okay. So should be on the screen. First of all, will be Rochelle and Natasha from Next Route Finance. So you're very welcome, ladies, and I'll let you take it away.
Hey, thank you. Hi, I'm Natasha, and this is Rochelle. We are sisters and co-founders of Next Street Finance, which is a finance brokerage / consultancy. Our backgrounds, actually, my background's in architecture and yours in accountancy. So it's taken us about 10 years through the business to sort of get into the real niche that we are on the property development side. But yeah, do you want to add to that?
That's kind of summarised pretty well. I mean, our backgrounds, like I said before, is diverse, but with very linked properties, so the architecture and the money side on the accountancy side. So yeah, we love this topic today and very enjoying getting involved with it.
Excellent, fantastic. Thank you very much, and we enjoyed having you on. It was just last year you were on one of our broadcasts, and really good feedback from a lot of listeners. Okay, next in line then is Bushra Mohammed. Bushra, we've met a few times at different networking events. I will give a shout out to Barry Ray and his Canary Connections event. I know we've met there a few times, so I'll let you explain your background, your involvement in property, please.
Yeah, sure. Hi, David. Hi, John. So my background is law. I qualified as a solicitor back in 2006. I practiced property law and conveyancing since then. I took a career break. Being a woman, my priorities were my children at the time, and took a career break for about 6 years, nearly 7, and then renewed my practicing certificate in 2020. A lot of things happened before that to lead up to that, and when I renewed my practicing certificate, I decided I wanted to be a consultant solicitor this time, which basically means I bring in my own work and I work the hours I want, which suits me perfectly because my other sort of hat is I'm also a property developer and investor. So when clients come to me, a lot of them are investors and developers, and I understand the challenges they've got. And they also understand my situation because when they're talking to me about things like planning and construction and builders, I also understand when I'm reviewing auction legal packs frequently, I can tell them because I've also been through the same process, what they also need to be doing in the background when I'm reviewing auction legal packs. I also do the other range of conveyancing services, whilst I also manage refurbs and the whole landlord management we all have to adhere to and control as well. And then obviously there's a whole family household as well to run.
Yeah, as if there wasn't enough to do, but that's actually going to be probably part of our discussion today in terms of how it applies to men and women, but you know, how do you juggle obviously family life with business life and things like that? So we'll get into that. Brilliant. Also delighted today to have Joanna Carr from Pay As You Stay and other multiple businesses in the world of property. I love sort of seeing you on social media, and you're very sort of honest and upfront about your life's journey in property, and I love catching up on that. So Joanna, brilliant to have you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Joe, and thank you everybody. Thanks, David. Basically, it's wonderful to be back because I had my first time here a few months ago, speaking about service accommodation. I am actually coming close to 5 years in property, which is a bit of a little anniversary. But prior to that, I was an early years teacher and got into property probably because of my baby girl, and in the final stages of pregnancy decided that I didn't want to return to teaching and I needed to come up with an alternative, and property kind of happened to be that thing, and I didn't quite know how it was going to develop. But it's been a brilliant 5 years. I have ended up specializing in service accommodation, and that's my main strategy and main focus, and we offer service accommodation management in the home counties and in London. But apart from that, as you've mentioned, a couple of other things developed kind of organically and naturally. I ended up setting a virtual assistance recruitment company, and I've started training and speaking about property, kind of utilizing my educational background, and started building my own investment portfolio very slowly in the background. So it's been definitely a great challenge, I think, as the ladies before highlighted, but it's been fun, and I'm really enjoying it. And it's wonderful to be here today, seeing and hearing about, stories from other women. So yeah, looking forward to the chat later, and thank you very much for the opportunity to join you here today.
Fantastic, thank you, Joanna. And our last guest today is Suzy Jenkins. Now I did, when I put this together, think let's not have all the same guests we had last year, because we had a really brilliant panel last year, and it was one of our most watched recordings on our YouTube channel. But I always call Suzy one of our celebrities. She's so energetic about property. She's obviously got a raise currently on the platform, which we'll touch on later. But I know has great insights into what's happening actually on the ground in property, given her role. So it just, Suzy, we had to bring you back on, had to have you on. So welcome once again, Suzy. You want to explain your background and even what you're doing sort of currently?
Yeah, thank you, David. I don't know whether you can actually see me properly because I've had to put the phone on the windowsill in the hope that it will hold the signal. Oh, good.
Okay, you're grand.
I am currently sitting in the recently completed Mercure Hotel in Paignton, which has been my latest role. 161 bed hotel that had, at one point, the scheme went bankrupt, so we've had to sort of pull it back, and they called me in to help get it finished. And then there's one next door that I'm about to start on this afternoon. This is now all nice and furnished. But originally, I had a science and business management degree. We're talking nearly 30 years ago now. And I was going to go off and be a vet or a research scientist. But sadly got very badly beaten up and had brain damage. So couldn't go and do that for a while, and was sucked into the building trade because the guy that I was that was working for me needed my business brain, and he taught me how to do the job. So 29 years later, here I am sitting in a newly finished hotel. But in the interim, I've been a bricklayer, carpenter joiner, roofer, you name it. If it's done on site, I've probably done it. I've also done an awful lot of work with people bringing their dreams to life as property investors. And then we found the Woollen mill, which, as you know, has taken over my life for the past couple of years. And we are so nearly there, it's within touching distance now. So exciting. I'm negotiating the Section 106 agreements, have a meeting hopefully next week. Fingers crossed.
Excellent. Okay. Yeah, we'll be definitely mention that briefly later on. So I should also give a shout out to Brenda from Leo Crowdfunding, who originally the plan was that Brenda would actually host this, which would have been brilliant given it that's Women's Day. But unfortunately, she wasn't feeling well the last couple of days. So you're stuck with me and John doing the hosting. So before we get into the first topic, which is just about the budget, I have a question for John. And that is, John, as the co-host, co-sponsor, and someone who's a big input into our topics, why have we never done an International Men's Day?
I think it'd be boring.
That's probably as good as answer you're going to get. You know, I think, Natasha, you're mentioning the fact you kind of noticed there wasn't as much attention perhaps on International Men's Day.
Yeah, I do think it gets forgotten about. I mean, I don't even know the date offhand, if I'm honest, but I feel like when it's International Women's Day, you almost, you open your social media in the morning and just see constant posts about it, which is great. And then International Men's Day, everyone's like, oh, is there one? Oh, what date is that? So I think unfortunately it gets forgotten about, but maybe as John said, is it boring? Is it not boring? Maybe 20 years, it could be fun.
Oh, I love getting off the controversial start. So I think we're going to have to, John, we're going to have to do an International Men's Day then next time around, whenever the date it is. So brilliant. Okay, so we normally start off with market update. I don't know, John, if you had a chance to see the budget and had a chance to read up on it, do you want to comment before we go to our guests?
There's not a whole lot to say, right? You know, in a sense, you don't necessarily want budgets to be exciting all the time. Especially after last year and the last 2 years of changes of prime ministers, changes of chancellors, turbulence because of weird and wacky budgets. So having a boring vanilla budget makes sense. We're coming off of COVID, we're coming out of supply chains, we have Ukraine war, we now have the banking crisis. So let's not stir the pot beyond what's necessary to just take care of day to day. And what's that British phrase? Something about struggling on, or keep calm and just steady as she goes.
Keep calm, carry on.
There you go.
That's the one. That's the one.
No,
Okay,
I think it's people want predictability, and predictability generally isn't wildly exciting.
Yeah. So has any of our guests had a chance to sort of digest any impact that there may be from the budget, or want to comment?
I had a quick read, David, and one of the things that I noticed that I think will have an impact is the childcare provision for parents, especially mothers who have got, I think it's from 9 months old, will get 30 hours free childcare. And I actually do believe it's going to make a huge impact on mothers. Now, if you're working and you're not making as much as somebody else, a male or female worker colleague, is going to, and majority of your earnings is going towards childcare, that's going to have a huge knock-on effect on your finances. And if this actually gives you that opportunity to now work, whether or not you take it up as a mother, whether you want to take it up and make the most of it and then go to work, it's going to make a huge opportunity for women, especially, to be able to say, well, I can now save up a deposit. I can do other things that I might not have had the opportunity to do because I was taking care of my child. But if you've got an opportunity with an employer to say, well, I'm going to now be able to save up a deposit or save up enough monies to be able to invest in a business or JV with somebody now, I think that's going to be a huge impact or benefit to a lot of women who want to. But I think there will be a lot of women from like myself. I'd like to be able to balance being able to do my role as a mother for my kids, but also keep continuing my career, my passion as a property investor and developer as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, that's well said. Well said on that. Anyone else want to comment on anything out of I think really probably corporation tax coming in obviously in April's probably the most thing that will going to impact, but anything else, I'll leave it open to contributors.
I mean, to be honest, I think that in terms of just the property side, from the things that I looked at and things I read and watched, it was actually this particular budget I felt was quite limited. There wasn't a huge amount of information on there, was there?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Which is good, isn't it? In a good,
yes.
like John said, it's good in a way because there's enough going on as it is. I think there's other areas that have been targeted or looked upon. I think that there's been enough changes in the last couple of years with the property side, especially on more on the investing side, buy-to-let market. So I think that's enough to cope with. If it was a reverse of that, maybe we would be at a positive, but it's not. So yeah. It is what it is.
Yeah.
No, 100% agreed with me. I must admit, I wasn't watching carefully the previous budget announcements, and it only been a few years, but I've been watching them very carefully because they've been affecting me directly, having started my own business. And it has been a lot to take in the past few years. And this one definitely has been, much less exciting in that way, but potentially, as you all said, good reasons for it. And we all have plenty to kind of focus on and work through in the meantime. So no, nothing major that has jumped out at me, to be completely honest.
Right, okay. Suzy, any comments on the budget?
Yeah, I was actually quite relieved. As Bushra says, I did like to see the inclusion of the part where ladies can get back to work sooner, because we have a skills shortage. If a business relies on a particular woman who goes off to have a child and then can't come back because they can't afford to, that is going to help massively with the skill shortage that we've got at the moment. But I was also relieved to see that there wasn't anything to cause a major wobble, because with the bank wobble in the States at the moment, we don't really need any more fear in the market where development loans start getting a little bit iffy. So for our side of the business, I was relieved that there wasn't a lot there to make people's eyebrows raise.
Yeah. So thank you. In terms of speculation at the start of the week, there was talk about the EPC standards. I didn't notice anything on that. Did anyone else see? Was that mentioned? There was nothing on that in the end, was there? It was just
unfortunately not actually.
No,
yeah, they put an unfounded speculation on that front. So so before we move on, just one thing that caught my attention as I was reading up on it, and it sort of carries on from John's point. I think there's been, get this right, 6 different housing ministers in a 12-month period. So that's if that's not instability, I don't know what is. So maybe now there will be some stability, a housing minister to put their own take on things and their own sort of stamp of how they want to do things, and that consistency and stability should hopefully help the industry. So okay, so let's kind of get a bit more into the Women at National Women's Day. Again, as one of the other slides said, all the contributors are given their personal opinion. This isn't obviously Leo Crowdfunding's opinion. I suppose first of all, what was there any one thing that took you into property? We'll just maybe do that one sort of quite quickly. Was there any like sort of major draw into it, as opposed to kind of it was your career choice? So we'll just go from the top down. So Bushra, you want to go first on that, and I'll
sure. Yeah, what took me into property was I was fortunate enough to do conveyancing and property law. So I was quite used to speaking to investors and buyers and sellers from all around the world. And through that, I obviously thought, well, maybe I should also invest in property, because as a firm, we were collaborating with other companies and promoting investments. So I generally thought, well, that is the way to go. And I think through nearly 15 odd years later, I personally know that that's one of the best ways to have a better financial security for my future as well. And it's not passive, but it's as passive as you want to make it as well. So I enjoy it. And for me, it's a nice opportunity to be able to do something that I enjoy as well, rather than just sit at my desk as well, doing archaic leases, but also to be on site. I enjoy looking at construction and doing all those things that we all, in various forms of one way or another, like to go and see property as well.
Okay, Joanna?
Okay, if it was one word for me, that would be probably desperation, because I didn't, because I didn't want to go back to work. So, I mean, so probably a step up from it would be motherhood. I wanted to be home with my daughter. I went for years of trying for a baby, and we didn't plan. My husband and I didn't plan what would happen when she was actually born. So it was the need to come up with a way that could generate income and would allow me to still be at home. But it's worked out, yeah. So quite kind of negative, maybe, you know, drives when you think about it, but a really good outcome. So that's really what it was. But no, there was nothing linked to property apart from the fact that I've owned and sold a house in that way.
Right. Okay, Rochelle and Natasha?
Yeah, I guess for me it was actually sort of more a career choice, because I was trained to be an architect, and so I kind of went down the property path initially by that route, and I loved it. I do think everything about, I love like sort of spatial planning and, you know, all the construction side things that go with it. But as you sort of go through that journey, I've always kind of been involved in money. Obviously Rochelle was trained to be an accountant, so our dialogue was always very much about money. Yet from an architecture perspective, there wasn't a huge amount, you know, it was very much about the design, but there wasn't a huge element on the money side, which is obviously a fundamental factor. Obviously I question everything, so I'm like, why is that? And then we kind of have discussions on it, and I think from that path, naturally, I was kind of doing the architecture, and then we teamed up together, didn't we, to go more down sort of the finance side route, so that we can actually help property developers progress with that. But yeah, I guess mine was more a career choice. Really.
But you do love property.
I do love property, yeah. I've always loved property.
I mean, I'm obviously different from a different spectrum to a certain degree, having more of the financial background, the accountancy, but I think we've always been quite interested in investing as a topic, or however you want to call it, but property has always been quite a strong asset class within that. So naturally, we've always been quite curious about property, hence the reason why we've kind of collaborated and gone down the route that we've gone down now, because it just seems like more of a natural fit. But it feels like it's always changing in a good way though, so it keeps on our feet. Yeah,
brilliant. John, you want to comment there?
Yeah, I love the point Natasha made about she questions everything. So when it comes to property deals, having this natural tendency, like, well, why is that? And could it be different? And I don't care that we always do it this way. Why do we always do it this way? And what's changed, and how are we going to restructure it? And that's sort of the sign of good design. A good architect is like, what can I imagine rather than what's already there? Well done.
Yeah. Okay. And Suzy, you did already sort of explain a bit about how you ended up, but do you want to just give a one sentence on your passion, I suppose, for why you've focused on it now?
Well, I have to give it to my mum, don't I? Because she was the commercial finance broker that people were bringing property deals to. And we were looking at them and saying, well, hang on, we could do an awful lot better. And also have a huge imagination and ability to make something out of things that other people can't seem to make something out of. I mean, the Woollen mill is a classic example. So it's something I, as you know, really love doing. And it is also my job.
Yeah. I see your mum's actually in the audience, Gainer's in the audience, so you've ticked that box for her, so you're in her good books.
We're good. On Sunday.
Okay, I should have said if anyone does want to comment on anything that's been said or ask a question, stick it into the Q&A, not the chat box. Stick it in the Q&A, please, and we'll be able to obviously put your questions to any of the panelists. So I've got 2 slides, and I'm going to come off the slide presentation to ask the rest of the questions. But I suppose the big discussion, or one of the key talking points when you're on a sort of International Women's Day and the whole discussion around equality and pay gap, etc. So I suppose the perception would be, an article here talks about how women in property industry are paid 1/3 less than men overall. Talks of huge disparity. So what sort of anecdotally, what does the panelists think? Is this a reality?
But also
what are the factors?
The point at the bottom, the guy saying that's because of the way the sample was taken.
Yes, so there's two sides to it, and that's so absolutely right, John. So yeah, who wants to comment on that? Let's leave it open. Who wants to jump in and be controversial?
I don't really feel like I've got, not saying a strong kind of viewpoint on this, because we've come from more of a self-employed, our own business role. I think this kind of particular statement is more and saying so is more around like employed.
Yeah. My signal's gone again.
It's a very vague statement. It's a bit hard to comment on that one.
It's clickbait.
I could also, of course, I could also comment. It's probably also the same in law firms as well for women lawyers, but within property industry. Well, which part of the property industry? We've got so many different professions in the property industry. It's so hard to say whether it's an architect, or are you a surveyor, or are you the developer? And for a lot of us, if we're developers, we run our own business. So it's a bit hard to then even comment more.
Yeah. So Suzy, you're actually on the ground in construction. So Bush makes a good point there. Running your own business, kind of, being at that level of a company. But then on the ground in construction, day to day on tasks, how do you find sort of the pay situation in terms of your experience?
Well, it actually says in that article that ladies who do my job are paid more, but at the moment, my guys on the tools are earning more than I am. So I think I dispute that. In fact, my current assistant is on very, very nearly the same money as I am. So again, I should be on significantly more because I have all the responsibility, but I'm not. So from personal experience, I think actually there is a disparity still.
And are there any factors in that, you think, Suzy? I mean, is that like, why do you think that is?
I would say it's the skill shortage. As I was mentioning earlier, there is I think in essence, it's since Brexit, we have quite a major skill shortage in the construction industry. And because of that, the trades are being paid inflated amounts of money because we need them so much. Whereas obviously I'm a little bit more dispensable because there are quite a lot of managers still.
Okay, yeah. So that difference, okay, that makes perfect sense. Logical. Okay. So okay, good in that one. So next one then is just regarding the fact that it's clear that more and more women are investing in property. So there was 172% sort of year-on-year increase. Is everyone, all contributors here, investors as well? I know Bushra definitely is. Yeah, so no, if Joanna, you maybe started off maybe investing, and then your service accommodation obviously needs investors. So do you want to sort of speak to that, this increase in women investing in property?
I think it's yes, and I started building up on that with my first property that I started last year, but it's nice, like looking at those statistics like that. It's nice to see it because we all know that it's like a ripple effect, and there was, if we look back a few decades, there were probably I may not have been around in the country or around in general, but we know that there were much fewer women investing on their own, and it has been changing as a trend, and the more women investors being seen and talking about what they're doing, the more common that is, the more other women are attracted to it. I suppose it becomes normalized. So it's a good trend to see, because as with any other kind of area where we see a bit of an underrepresentation, it's just good to see that change. So yeah, I mean, and when I see stats like this, I think it's exciting, it's good, and it's nice to see other women doing well and, you know, achieving things and being role models. I think that's a big chunk of that.
Good. Anyone else? I suppose all of you need investors into your property. So Bushra, you're a developer, obviously. Rochelle, Natasha are involved in the debt side, and Suzy's got a project. So investors are needed in. Have you found that you're getting more and more female investors in recent years? Is that anything that's quantifiable?
I can't obviously give you just a stat on that, but I think it's great when I get a lot of women DMing me on LinkedIn, on Instagram, or just contacting me, asking me for advice. And the new investors who clearly want to maybe go down this path and think it's a bit more better for us as well. It's fantastic. And I'm part of the Property Sisters UK group, which is an amazing group. We've got a couple of 100 almost group in our WhatsApp group. And it's beautiful because we all know we bring a different kind of perspective to deals, and we've got an amazing talent pool where we collaborate, we ask for advice, we exchange ideas and give each other support as well. Now, with the female investors now coming in as well, there's clearly a reason and need, because, for example, I also thought if something happened to my partner, what else do I have to fall back on as well? And I've got a lot of other family and friends who, for whatever reason, their partners passed away, they've split up, and that source of income has gone now. And I also really want to promote that women must have that source of income to provide for themselves, if not for something, you know, bad to happen, but to be able to give them that sense of security, to be able to say, well, if something did happen, I've got this. And it's something else, a different purpose as well, to have as well, not just for security purposes as well, of course. But I do want to promote it, not just for women who they get married, but from a young age. I've got a couple of 20-year-olds who are now investing as well. And it's fantastic, because I wish I knew what they know now as well. And I would have invested a lot earlier as well. Yeah,
that's a really good point. Anyone else want to comment on just the increase in investors?
I mean, we've personally always been investors for probably 10 years, haven't we? We just more sort of the single buy to let side, just as an interest of ours, again, interested in money, interested in property, the combination between the two things. But from a client point of view, I mean, as much as we always encourage women, we love working with women. Actually, I probably would say 100% of our clients are actually still male. Like 100% of the phone calls and the emails that I do every single day are mainly with the males still.
Yeah.
So
I think it's because it's almost seen as there's two parts of the industry. You've got the investing side, which is your not traditional, but you know, more your term loans, your passive income, as they say, that side. And then you have the other side, which is kind of more our focus, which is the development side, which is more of a short term. The intention some people have is then to create the portfolios, in which case you're back onto the investing side. Other people are kind of true developers, now just buy and sell, and that's their cycle. So we sit more on this side because it's in a different risk profile as well. But the general idea of women getting more into property. I mean, you even did a post last week on Women's Day saying that it was like, 50 years ago you weren't allowed to get a mortgage for women. So we've come a long way. We just need to keep pushing that and encouraging people to get involved.
That's a really good point. I actually had Joanna just had some stats, which I was going to put on a slide, and then I didn't bother. I don't want to get too sidetracked, but yeah, I think it was 27 or something that was the first time women can actually own property in the UK. Oh no, that's when the mortgage, they could first get a mortgage, which meant effectively own their own property. But back into like the 1800s, John, actually in New York, there was actually, as they call, like the Women's Property Act. And then it actually was the late 1800s, the UK did have an act about women owning property, which I wasn't aware of. I don't know if your extensive knowledge, John, steps back to the 1800s.
Well, if we go more recent, actually, I was talking to a property investor like more than a decade ago. It was a lady in London. It wasn't exactly a property meeting. and she said that she bought a property in Notting Hill back when Notting Hill was this dodgy sort of scummy area. So I think that would have been like 60s, 70s, something like that. And the loan was from the council because as a woman, she couldn't get a loan from a financial firm. She wasn't married, and the only way she'd get a loan to buy a property was the council would basically provide it. And it's like, you got to be kidding me. It's like the thing I think that's positive is when we find these things shocking, because we like, how could that be? And it's like, well, we've certainly moved forward. Now, I do have a slightly controversial topic I'd like to ask, and Bushra sort of brought it up. So there's a group you said you're a part of, which is, I think, Women in Property. And do women-only groups help bridge the divide? And then how do you bridge a divide when you stay on one side?
It's not exclusive. So, okay, so we've got the Property Sisters group. I think it's comforting to be able to just speak to fellow women as well. But then we're in daily interaction with men anyway, all the time. So I think it's just nice to be able to just have that one group of women, just for a lot of women to maybe feel a bit more comfortable, because we're either speaking to male people in different professions or usually on the tools in the trades when we're on site as well.
So should we get to the point where we don't even think of that as an issue, you know, and this isn't really just for you, Bushra, it's for anyone.
Yeah.
But this idea that women could buy housing in 18 whatever, 19 whatever, and women could get loans, and that's so far in the past in the way we think. It's like, of course you get a loan, right? What difference does it make which chromosome you have? So this idea that if we have these transition groups, that you go to a safe place to feel comfortable, but in a decade or two, or your children, it's like, why would mom do that? We don't do that. We just get on with business. And I can see how maybe we're in that transition period. So
yeah, possibly. No, you make a good point, John. I think it's not just the fact that, okay, we're all women. I think it's more for women that feel more comfortable to be able to maybe interact with other women who are in very similar positions, and to be able to relate to another person is really important for something that is much of the time you're solo. So if you can relate to another female, then you might have the same perspective, possibly. You might be experiencing the same things. For example, I'll say, I think I'm pretty much have been mansplained so many times if I'm on a site or getting a quote. So many times I'm just thinking, I didn't understand what that word was until I explained it to somebody a couple of months ago. And I said, why was he speaking to me like this? Like I didn't know anything. But it's an interesting point, but it's one of those challenges that I have to kind of adhere to, but also just say, well, I'm pretty sure that will be the norm for some time until maybe the next generation have these kind of projects as well.
Yeah, the analogy is when I talk to Scandinavians, and it's the fathers that took 2 years off to raise the baby, and they have the father group, and they have baby stories. And to an American, it's like, that's weird. To a Scandinavian, it's like, well, why?
Yeah. Well, and just to go on from that, Bushra, you're saying about your, sort of real life examples of situations where that was the environment. Suzy, you're bound to come across that, obviously being on sites, and I suppose what would be traditionally be sort of very sort of man.
Sorry, my
dominated.
phone. Sorry, my phone was ringing, which is the trouble with doing this in the middle of the working
okay.
day.
No, well, you're okay now. So yeah, any sort of anecdotal experiences similar to Bushra, where because you're a woman you were treated differently?
Hundreds, David. I mean, the guy who trained me initially, one of the well-known builders merchants, has a lovely cafe associated with it up in Cheltenham, and he used to take me in there. He'd go in and order his breakfast and send me into the shop, just for the crack, to see whether I actually got served before he'd finished his breakfast, because they would completely ignore me because I was alone again.
You're okay.
I may have to drive off in a second. So, and then even more recently than that, I went into another well-known buildings merchants, and I needed a massive order. Oh, you're doing a spot of DIY, love? Really? And yeah. They're thinking, yeah, okay. And then, but on site, I'm one of the guys because I have to be. So I don't generally have any issues actually on the sites I work on, but I've had a lot of outside, and I get mansplained on a daily basis.
Oh.
John will testify to the number of evenings that I've talked with him and I'm spitting because I've wanted to show somebody, in essence, how manly I am by giving them a good clout. But obviously you can't do that.
Figuratively speaking on a recording, figuratively speaking, of course.
Exactly. You can't do it, but, oh, honestly,
yeah, no, I can imagine that would be challenging.
Yeah.
Thanks much for that. So next question I have is about challenges, and obviously these aren't obviously female specific, but even just in whether it is female relevant or just in general, we'll go maybe to Natasha and Rochelle and then over to Joanna. So what challenges, just maybe in business in general, have you found being in property?
I think our biggest challenge when we first started, probably 10 years ago, we were that much, we really went for it, and we were obviously a lot younger. I think that was a hard challenge for us because not a lot of, especially men, I think more so, but didn't really take us seriously as much, because of our age and because we were women. We did actually, even back in the early days, I always remember we actually lost a client once because we were on the phone and he said, oh, can I speak to can I speak to the owner, or can I speak to whoever owns it? And we were like, I was like, yes, it's me. And then it was like, oh, we have another owner. So I was like, yeah, put them on. And then obviously Rochelle, yeah, it's the same. And he's like, oh, you another woman? I'm like, yeah, both two women. And I think in the end he just hung up on us, which was really rude because I didn't even get to thank him to say thank you because I wouldn't want to work with you anyway.
Excellent. That's good.
I don't know if that was sort of more, again, we've always been quite strong characters individually anyway, and I guess together we're more force. So we always stand our ground, and it's probably just what's kept us. I just see it as maybe it's character building.
Yeah, I think that's the key. I think
business, whether it's property business, however you look at it, it does come from, like, and it's kind of a cliche, but self kind of development, self-growth. You have to go through that. You have to, in a bad way, you have to almost experience these things to make you stronger. And that's like an old school type of thing, but it's made until you go through that process, you have those clients, so you have that kind of contacts Suzy has and the merchants, you're never going to emotionally feel like, hang on, that's wrong, or I need to change that. Or you can then be disruptive in your own right because you're more kind of passionate, or so I think that's kind of the challenge, but it's more of a character building strength side of it.
I think you make a brilliant point when it comes to character, and at the risk of formulating my sentence not correctly, but sometimes I think there are equality issues that get played on, say, male female, when really at the heart of it is character. There could be male characters who couldn't go on a building site and survive. So it's not that it's necessarily the fact that someone's female per se. Well, that may be in some occasions, of course, but it's not as simple as, oh, because they're female, that's what happened. Because there's plenty of men go on certain environments. Obviously, I've been in the military before. I mean, you got to have a certain level of character. I've been in semi-professional football team, dressing rooms. Again, there's men who just can't survive that environment. It is what it is, and therefore the property industry in some cases may be like that. So, Joanna, any comments on that in terms of challenges you've experienced?
Do you know what? A brilliant point, I think, that's raised and kind of linked to what I was going to mention is yes, it's not, there is a certain level of imbalance, and there will be certain situations that might kind of throw us, and discussions like this are important because they just like bring it to light. I mean, the thing that I remember that is linked to being a woman, even though I kind of speak about not I don't like using labels, etc. But there are some situations where certain things wouldn't happen. If you weren't a woman. I remember getting into my second networking event when my baby girl was 2 months old, and I was the proudest of myself I could be, because I listened to all the podcasts and webinars, was doing the midnight feeds, and I actually knew what a buy-to-let and HMO were. And I got to the very basic level of understanding that I thought I can go in and I can understand the conversation. I remember standing in a small group And it was, you know, I get on with males really well. Most of my network are male, so it kind of naturally happened that I was in a group. There were three men in that group, and they were all chatting about what they did in property. And when it came to my turn, and they asked me what I was doing, and I explained that I'm just getting started, just had a baby, and, you know, looking forward to, well, at that point I thought I was going to invest up north. And the first question I got asked was, is your husband okay with you being here? Because it was like a late event. And do you know what? Like, I was so taken aback. Like, it was unimaginable to me to be asked something like this. But I love that guy. I mean, honestly, I love the fact that he said that, because I needed fuel. And, you know, sometimes you need it, but at the same time, I thought about it recently, just like, you know, and thinking, well, it could easily be the other way, you know, it could have put me off. And that's why I was saying that it links to what you said earlier. It is a character building thing, but it's probably good to have those open conversations, because otherwise you feel like, oh, it's just me, you know, I'm not meant to be here. It just helps. I think this is very important. So I think, you know, that is, but would I say that this was the biggest challenge? No, to me, that was like a really, you know, in a way, positive spin on it. And you just, you end up enjoying it, because I think we need to prove, I do think that sometimes, I don't know if it's a personality thing or female thing, I do feel like I sometimes need to work a bit harder to prove myself, but I think it's pushed me up. It's helped me and made me work harder. So that's, again, depending on the spin we put on it. Bushra has already touched upon it, but like there is like the life stuff of part of being a mother, but, you know, dads don't necessarily always get involved. And I have huge respect, and I know a lot of dads who are juggling property investing, business, and looking after the family. So, you know, I don't think it's only a female thing, but there are a couple of things that, you know, just we go through. So yeah, I mean, these would be probably the major ones, but all I suppose.
Yeah, no, that's really good, really good. So, okay, we need to sort of move towards a wrap up here. So, we've one more question for everyone. If you kind of can think of a sentence, and then John, if I have a couple of slides just to finish up on. So, what tips would you give a young lady who maybe is at school, university, and saying, "I want my career to be property. That's what I want to do." Have you any tips, advice, golden nuggets, whatever they are? I'll go with we'll go Bushra, and then Rochelle, Natasha, and then Joanna can finish off.
Sure. So I would say learn as much as possible from whether it's networking or books or webinars, first of all, just to get your foundation first. Then I would suggest you explore the different avenues within property. Not everyone's going to be suited to be a property developer, and you just have to think outside the box as well to see where your skills lie as well. So whether your skills lie in being an investor, or do you want to go into being an architect? There's so many other options. It's an interior designer. Until I actually started networking 4 years ago, I didn't realize how many professions came together to do a development. So be open-minded, and just see where your skills and interests lie within property, I think, and then pursue that.
Brilliant. Okay, thank you for that. Natasha and Rochelle?
I would say I probably would, my advice would be go for it. I think you can challenge the status quo, and I don't think you should not do something just because it is more male dominated. If anything, that's probably quite refreshing. You know, like if you're in school, or, you know, you think, oh, I want to be an electrician, or I want to be a trade, like typically that was very much more male based. I think girls that want to do that now, they should go for it and explore that, and they might change, you know, you might change to a different trade, or you might not actually enjoy it as much. But in my head, when I was younger, if I had done what I did choose to do, I wouldn't be where I am now. And if I didn't treat myself, like in my mind, I'm just the same as a man, as a male. I can do the same things, I can be capable of the same things. So you just have to believe in yourself. I think pick what you enjoy, genuinely enjoy, don't let people tell you what you can't do, because you can do whatever you want, basically.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
Probably would just add to that and just say, I think property specifically is quite a people business. I think that you need, whether that's male, female, whatever, I think the key thing is network, get to grow your team, find people that you gel with, that you trust. That's going to take time. You're not going to trust someone that you first meet. So I think that the principle of networking and growing your network is quite a key thing really early on days.
Brilliant. Okay, and Joanna, the last word to you. And then John, if there's any comments or the Q&A that we need to comment on to wrap this section up, I'll go to you after that. So Joanna, I'll let you bring it home.
I'm trying hard to add something that hasn't been said before. Build a diverse network, definitely, and just diverse women and men, and just have that as your support group. And another thing, just recognize what you bring to the table, like past experience, whether that is professional or life experience. I think in property, in particular, that really does play a vital part. So I think these would be the two key things, and just enjoy the process.
Excellent, fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. I think there's some really good sort of nuggets there, and some stuff you could definitely cut up and repurpose on the old social media front, and some of those takeaways. Fantastic. So John, has there been any comments or anything in the Q&A you want to just draw attention to?
There is one that I wanted to pick up on right at this point, and it's something actually Joanna and I used to talk about when I was guiding her in some of her journey there. Sometimes when people have a fear of something, or they're concerned about what others are going to think, or I'm not really that experienced yet, or whatever it is, I say, well, flip it around. How would you explain that to a child? How would you explain that to an employee who's junior and you're trying to grow them and nurture them and develop them? And many times what you would do is say, well, I understand you feel that way, or you fear that, or you're concerned about that, or you have a gap. How are we going to fix that? Or how are we going to move that forward? Because no woman, no father wants their child to be held back by self-limiting beliefs. And at the same time, we don't want to do crazy things. So it's about creating environments. And by the way, I'm a bit of a in-your-face asshole sometimes. So if someone said to me something similar, like they said to Joanna, it's like, did you really think that, or did you open your mouth before you finished thinking?
Yeah.
It's like, be an idiot if you want, but try not to do it when I'm around, because I'm going to point it out. So there are guys that they just need to man up, or they need to shut up, or they need to get duct tape, and come on, we don't need that type of crap in this environment. And there is a comment in the thing about women's group, the environment would be different if men were there. And that's sort of my point. It's like, well, yeah, I know. And it's the same with why we used to have male clubs, and we used to have white clubs, and we used to have brown clubs. And it's like, at what point do we we're all alive, we're all trying to move forward, let's get together, let's pull together as a team, let's form a team, rather than, oh, you need to go over where the Irish people are, and you need to go over where the others are, the Catholics or whatever. And by the way, being an American Irish Catholic, these are some of the conversations that used to happen that don't happen now.
Yeah, I think that's very, very fair, John. And one of the comments were made there about this person's father couldn't get a mortgage initially, obviously because of the color of his skin. So these are all factors in society. Obviously, Suzy had dropped off there. Her mum has fired the message in. Suzy's tip to young females starting out in property: you really need to know your facts and be best or better than your equivalent male colleague. That's I like that. That makes a lot of sense. So fantastic. Okay, John, have you a Corey's Corner you want to cover?
Well, one of the things that's interesting, because of forget the budget, forget women in property. Today we saw the Credit Suisse received a emergency or temporary support of the Swiss National Bank of 50 million Swiss francs. That bank had a bad rumor a number of months ago, probably 6 months ago. It was completely false. They somewhat flubbed the PR saying, hey, that's wrong. And it caused a little mini stir. And it was only in the financial community. Most of you never would have heard of it. But that caused a ripple that affects developers. So a client at the time had two development loans, mid-project. They were called, as our contract says in the clause you probably didn't see, we have 6 weeks notice period. We're giving you 6 weeks to give us all the money back. And the reason was those two banks, which were Challenger, or maybe they weren't even banks, maybe they were just Crowd this or whatever they were, they weren't your high street bank. They had gotten their money from a U.S. fund, and the U.S. fund had its money from Credit Suisse. So when Credit Suisse wobbled, the fund said, I needed my cash back. So they called up these two operators in the UK. I won't name them. You would recognize one of them. Those then called their clients. Now, it worked out in this case to my ex-client. They said, we really like you. You've done a great job. We'll give you 3 months. Now, within a week and a half, they called back, said, oh, fire's over. We no longer have to give the money up the food chain to get it back to effectively Credit Suisse. So therefore, you can continue your project. So read your contracts. Be careful about your sources of money. The best interest rates might come with stings in the tail, and a wobble in Switzerland might rip around and bite you.
Excellent. Good point, John. Thank you very much indeed. Okay, so just a couple of slides to wrap up here in terms of our platform update. Unfortunately, Suzy's actually dropped off, but we have sort of finalized all the drawdown, and Suzy's received her money from the recently funded project, which allows her to complete the last couple of reports and studies that she had to do. So I don't know, John, are you any up to date on this one from speaking to Suzy the last couple of days? But I think she's sort of waiting for feedback from the council, and hopefully in the relatively near future, some good news.
Well, Suzy is a client, and I don't want to necessarily say things that I'm not supposed to say. What she did mention herself is that they're actually discussing the Section 106, I'll call it a tax, the agreement that would be between the developer and the local council. And that's generally a signal that we're pretty far along. And now the council's interested in what they're going to get for their piece of the pie. So therefore, they're imagining that there's a pie coming.
Yeah. Okay. So stay tuned if you are an investor in either tranche 1 or tranche 2. I think tranche 1 was our highest number of individual investors into a project. So keep an eye out for that, and there'll be hopefully some good news coming relatively soon. Current on the platform right now as a live project is the Central Point up in Liverpool. If you haven't looked at that and wish to, you can go to the homepage. You can click on there, get the equity offer document. This is a bunch of apartments in a really good location just north of the main hub of Liverpool, built by Integritas Property Group. So you can go on there and have a look there if you want. The 2 raises just closed there in the last week. Now neither of them actually reached their minimum level of funding. This is very much a marketplace. We promote deals, put them on the platform, but ultimately it's up to the investors if they come in and the numbers required to hit the minimum. With both of them, there was some quite sort of unique factors. In Thurlaston House, St Ives, there's been some really good feedback from investors, a lot of interest in this one. And Mark's gonna look at perhaps rejigging the offer. And he may well come back to the platform with a changed offer, which will be very interesting when that happens. And then on the other one, which is just closed, I know we get a lot of emails about this one and messages, Stafford Gardens. So there has been a material change in the project. It's not for me to say whether that's a positive or a negative change, but there's involves an opportunity to have insurance to underwrite the raise. So what Market FIFA is doing is going to launch, once it's approved and obviously goes through the normal processes, it is his intention to launch a smaller raise initially and then come back for the main raise for the planning. So there's been some very strongly material changes in that. So that is now currently closed while he again kind of redoes the information and brings it back to the platform. So on both of these, stay tuned. I think, John, the reality is, and is we are a marketplace, and not every single deal comes to platform necessarily flies out the door in funds. This is very much a dance between investors and fundraisers, and that's just the factors that play in crowdfunding raises.
That's true, and also it's the dance music being played, similar to you can see 2 auctions happen in a property that doesn't sell one auction, sells in the other auction for more than the original reserve price. And the reason is there was a different audience in the room at the time that the opportunity came forward.
So again, stay tuned for that. So next month, I'm delighted to have Roy O'Mara is going to be here, and he's going to be covering a topic. Now, he's very experienced in the world of bridging finance, but he's also got a really interesting story in business. So I will be talking a little bit about obviously the bridging market. Primarily, we're going to be looking about overcoming challenges in the property business, and a lot of these topics and what Roy is going to talk about will be relevant for any business, any startup, scale-up business. So there are a lot of good takeaways, a lot of good experiences, a lot of good examples of things that have happened to him in business. And then obviously some of that will obviously be related to property. And no doubt we'll ask him to give an update on the sort of the lending market, which of course will be relevant then to anyone who is interested in that. So John, I know you have certainly come across Roy, I'm aware, in the past, I think, and really good guy. Really looking forward to next month.
I think I met him 15 years ago, actually. It was down Guildford at a property meeting there that way long ago doesn't happen anymore. So yeah, he's a tech sales, CRM business guy that morphed into the property space like many of us do. And he chose to go down the lending route as his primary focus, and has quite a track record. Yeah,
I was speaking to him back about 4 or 5 weeks ago. It was actually a project on our platform we're talking about, and he's introduced a couple of developer clients to us. So we're having a general conversation, and just as we talked, John, he started to give some stories and some things that happened to him. And by the time he finished, I'm like, Roy, I need you as a guest on our broadcast, because you had so many good things to say there about business and scaling, and that's exactly what I want to unpeel that. So yeah, so he's confirmed for next month. So looking forward to that. Okay,
maybe we can get some of these fine developer types who happen not to be male to, as a coincidence, they could be asking questions of Rory.
Yes,
be on the other side. We're there, driving the conversation.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Very good point. We should actually get out in advance, and even just in general, get people to submit questions maybe for him, even in advance, particularly around the lending side if needs be. So that's something we could definitely do. Okay, so for those that aren't already, you can follow us on the various normal social media channels, particularly again YouTube, where we have all the recordings and all the back catalogue, wealth of information and knowledge there. And that leads us to the last slide. So thanks everyone for joining us. I'll let our 3 guests that are still here give a final one sentence, either how you've enjoyed it, tips you want to make, plans for the future. Well, you've got 1 sentence before we wrap up. Yeah, so go Bushra, Joanna, and then Natasha and Rochelle.
Sure. Just thank you for inviting me, and keep investing and explore your avenues. Make sure you look through all the options and think outside the box when it comes to property.
Excellent. Joanna?
Thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. For anybody looking to start, just get started, reach out to anybody who resonated with you, to for advice, get tips, and don't get discouraged, and just keep pushing. Absolutely.
Rochelle, Natasha.
Yeah, just say thank you very much for inviting us today. Yeah, I mean, it's just, again, always keep finding your next route, as we like to say. And yeah, just as Tasha says, just be mindful and go for it, enjoy it, enjoy the process as well.
Yeah, thank you very much for having us. It's great to hear everyone's thoughts and feedback.
Fantastic. Okay, thanks everyone. See you all soon. Thanks for your time. Bye everyone. Bye-bye.